want to honor everybody's time just to start the meeting. Before we do, I just want to let everybody know that it's going to be recorded. So if you need to turn off your cameras, just go ahead and do so right now. All right, thank you. My name is Brandon Rabe. I'm going to be the moderator for this call tonight. And just as a brief introduction of myself, I am a buy and hold investor using the BRRRR strategy out to invest in the Midwest. I'm also a father of 2 small children. I have a wife and I have a full-time W-2 job. In fact, I am still at work. I'm on break, so don't worry. But yeah, it's just I find a lot of value being here at this meetup, and I'm willing to take a lunch break, this late in the evening just to be here with you folks. So, yeah, I also wanted to say that if everybody can put their mics on mute, just to kind of make it less distracting for the presenter and just to kind of make it an enjoyable experience for everybody. If you did have any questions, go ahead and do so and put it in the chat box down below. And then our presenter will get to it during the question and answer portion of the call. Thank you. All right, so for this evening, it is my great honor and privilege to introduce a good friend of mine. His name is Young Park. He's a buy and hold real estate investor using the BRRRR strategy to invest in Kansas City. He recently completed his first BRRRR and is in the middle of his second. Throughout the week, he is a pharmacist. He enjoys helping veterans kind of manage their chronic illnesses. Before moving to Hawaii, he did live in South Korea, Los Angeles, Atlanta, and Reno. So he's been all over the place, and but now he calls Hawaii home. He's been here for 2 years, and within those 2 years, that's when he kind of came across financial freedom and real estate investing. A couple other facts about Young is that he loves watching football and basketball. He volunteers at his church on the sound team, kind of making sure the microphones and instruments sound well. And he recently got engaged. Congratulations, Young. Yeah. But from what I understand, he's still having trouble getting used to calling her fiance. But I just want to say congratulations to you really quick. But without further ado, I just want to welcome up Young Park. Young.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for that awesome. Oh, thank you, Stacey, for that awesome intro, Brandon. Yeah. You know what's funny? I think when I type fiance, it autocorrects to finance every time, just because that's what I use more. But yeah, as Brandon mentioned, I moved to the island about 2 years ago for my W-2 job, which is to work as a pharmacist. And a chance to live in Hawaii, because why not, right? It's everyone's dream to just be here. Before I moved here, I thought I was going to golf and surf every day, but that didn't really happen. But instead, I got interested in investing. So today I wanted to share my why and about my experience using the BRRRR strategy. So yeah, thank you guys for being here. So why did I start investing in the first place? I have a good, safe job with great benefits. However, I knew that just working as a pharmacist, I'll likely have to work till, the typical retirement age, which is about, let's say 65 years old, just to have enough money in my 401k so that I can retire, me and my spouse can retire and just get by. But we probably wouldn't be able to create generational wealth. So for me, what I really wanted to do was to be able to provide for my parents. I'm a first generation immigrant, and my parents moved our family of 4 with the hopes and dreams to provide better life for us. They didn't speak any English back then or even now, and they did manual labor well into their 60s so that they can provide for me and my sister. So because of that, I am so privileged and to be here. And my why on investing is in the first place is for my parents, so that I can help them retire and live comfortably, and so that they can actually get to enjoy life. My another why is to be financially independent, so that I can live on my own terms and have options. God forbid, if something were to happen to my parents, I want to make sure I'm in that position where I can let go of everything and just be with my family as long as I need to. So that is my why. So why did I get into real estate? Initially, when I first got interested in investing, I was looking into stocks and of course 401k because these were the easy investments to get into, right? Maybe I shouldn't say easy, but it definitely has lower barrier to entry and you can start with low money. And at the time, just the thought of gaining about 6 to 10% annual return on investment sounded like a pretty sweet deal. So I was learning more about stocks through YouTube, of course, and I accidentally stumbled upon some YouTube videos on real estate investing. After watching several videos, they were kind of mentioning all the rich, wealthy people, millionaires, they all invest in real estate. So that got me thinking, they must be doing something right. They know something that I don't know, and I want to do what they're doing. So since then, I started reading real estate books, listened to podcasts, watched YouTube videos and webinars so that I can learn more about it. For me, what I really liked about real estate investing is that it's a hard asset, and it's not just some imaginary money floating around the internet. And also, if I were to compare it to the stocks, it's like having a rental property is like having a really good monthly dividend on the property or your investment. But anyways, as I learned more about the real estate and learned how to analyze a little better, I realized that investing in Hawaii for cash flow didn't make much sense at all. And because of this, I was either thinking of waiting until I moved back to the mainland or invest in turnkey property. A turnkey property is basically a rent-ready property where there's a tenant in place already. And on the day of the purchase, so pretty much from day one, you're gonna start making cash flow. So I was thinking about doing all of that. And also at that point, I decided that I wanted to attend a real estate meetup and meet up with other investors who are actually doing this. So I did go to one of the meetups and I met with a fellow investor, Jin. I don't know if he's here or not, but he's the one who pointed me out to CJ and Jazz's meetup in Kapolei. So I decided to check that out. So when I went there, it's actually the day CJ was presenting on the difference between the numbers, the cash flow difference between Hawaii and Kansas City. So when I heard that presentation, man, it just made so much sense to invest out of state and not here. So I wanted to work with CJ and Jazz. So I decided to network with them that very night. And I had the opportunity to meet with CJ. I was super nervous and also excited to meet with him because yeah, I wanted to work with him and I was just super excited. And I guess it went well. I was able to work with CJ and Jazz. So yeah, and up to that point, I've just been learning and learning and learning. As you can see, I'm emphasizing on the learning. It's great, but through the mentorship program, I was able to transition from just learning into taking action. So now I want to get into my story. So as you guys may or may not know, I use the BRRRR strategy. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat the whole process over again. And if you can execute this strategy correctly, in theory, you can recycle all of your initial capital over and over and over without leaving any money left in the deal. So this is extremely efficient and a way to build up your portfolio. So the first step that I actually did before I even started looking for properties is to make sure I'm financeable. Meaning I went to a loan officer and I asked him, I got a pre-approval to see how much they're willing to lend me once I'm ready to refinance down the process. So I did that and I learned how to calculate or analyze deals and estimate for rehabs. and I started looking for properties on both on and off market. So on markets, like the MLS, Zillow, Trulia, and off markets would be from wholesalers, where you can find from Craigslist or Facebook pages. And of course, there's a 4 to 5 hour difference between Hawaii and Kansas City. So almost every single day, I woke up around 4 to 5 o'clock in the morning so that I can speak with the agents, property managers, the sellers, and analyzing and offering on deals. Even after work, I kept looking for properties and analyze deals. And I was tired, but I had to keep going because um, I knew, because my why was stronger than that. I knew I had to do this so that I can build long-term wealth and be able to provide for my parents. So I've been doing that. It went on for months and months, and to make this deal right, I had to get the number had to be correct. So that's why it took so long, 2 to 3 months, even though I was looking at properties every single day. And finally, I was able to find an off-market deal on Craigslist. This was actually from a wholesaler. The wholesaler himself had to motivate to sell quickly because he had a family reunion coming up in a week. So I only had 7 days from the day I went under contract to send in for inspection and close on the property. And because of this time constraint, I was further negotiated down on the price. And once the contractor came back with the bids, the number was within my striking range. So yeah, I decided to lock down on this deal. So now, I've been telling you about, looking for the property and buying it, but how did I even buy it? How did I fund it? In order to really utilize the BRRRR strategy correctly, you have to have some cash up front so that you can purchase the distressed properties quickly. And I was just getting into the workforce that year, so I had no capital of my own to fund the project or even buy the property. So this meant I had to raise capital. And this was extremely challenging for me because, one, I'm very conservative. I'm a people pleaser. I don't like to ask people because I felt like I was asking for money, even though it was actually an investment for these lenders with me. So even though it was supposed to be that kind of mindset, it was still very uncomfortable for me. But because of my why, which is to provide for my parents, I had to suck it up and go out and do it. So yeah, I actually counted how many people I asked before I was able to raise enough funds for the first project. I asked 31 people to raise capital. So just like, just like analyzing properties and, offering on the properties, you're going to get a lot of no's before you get enough yeses. So that's how I purchased the property and be able to fund the rehab. So now going back to the story, I just purchased the property. It's under, now it's time for rehab. And this is probably the second most important part after the purchase, because you're going to spend a long time and also a good amount of money fixing up the property. Well, and that depends on the condition of the property, but at least for my property, it was a pretty decent rehab. So because this was my first project, I wanted to make sure I use a trusty general contractor, or going forward, I'm just gonna call him GC, to work on the rehab. And through working with this GC, I learned about the wordings and the clauses on the contract so that it specifically defines your payment schedule, and also it defines the completion date of the project with both incentives if they were to finish earlier and penalties if they were to finish the project late. This is to ensure that the general contractor will finish complete the project on time. He's got the incentive to do that. So everything was going well, and the project started somewhere between early to mid-August. And everything was going well up to this point. We had an agreement that the project is going to take about 10 weeks, and things were great. However, and then the hurricane season started in the Midwest. So man, just as soon as the project was about to get started, it started pouring every single day. And that was delaying the painting job. And painting job doing early on is important because you want to make sure the background is painted and then you put everything else in front of that. So that was, the limiting factor that we needed to get done early on. But I think that literally dragged on or there was a delay for about 3 to 4 weeks. And that was really frustrating, but because there's absolutely nothing you can do about that. You can't control the weather. It's out of your control. So yeah, I'm sure you can imagine how frustrated I was. And whenever there were some dry spurts in between, the GC had other projects going on at the same time that he took on before my project. So he had to make sure those were getting done in that order. So after that had happened, after about a month of nothing happening, I was just getting frustrated. And in addition to that, I got this really nice letter from the county housing department saying that, hey, did you know that your grass has grown nice and tall from all these rain? If you don't cut it, we're gonna fine you. So, I didn't know what to do. So, luckily the contractor went there to cut the grass to keep it nice. But yeah, and soon after that, the rain had stopped, and the project was back on resume. And soon after that, the electrician went in and found out that the electricals did not have any grounding on it. And I'm not going into any technicalities here, but that requires a permit from the county, and you have to fix that up. And then an inspector from the county has to come in to make sure it's done correctly. So, and as you guys can imagine, government employees don't move that quickly. So that was another huge delay. And I can say that because I'm a government employee. So yeah, so that took extra couple weeks, and also I had to dig into my contingency fund. And just giving you guys a heads up, you guys should always have contingency fund, because something is going to come up that you never got or the contractor didn't see from the original bid. So always have that money on side. So after about 12, 13 weeks, the property was ready to be rented out. So now that it was finally ready to be rented out, I thought it was going to be a piece of cake going forward. All you have to do is just post it on Zillow, and people are just gonna start rolling in, just dying to live in the property that's newly renovated, right? Well, it wasn't quite that easy. By the time the rehab was completed, it was probably a week or two before Thanksgiving. And in Hawaii, the weather changed. There's not much of a temperature difference, but back in the Midwest, it's snowing and it's cold, and people don't want to move around the holiday season in the months of November and December. So with this time factor, I decided to place the rent in about the middle of the range that I originally thought of, placing the rent at. So thinking that people will still be interested because this is a nicely turned property. But man, I was wrong. There were not enough interest, not enough applicants coming in to see the property. And maybe a week or two after that, that slow activity was going on. I checked on some other websites just to see if my post, my property was being posted in their websites. And I realized that there was a glitch in the system. So it was posted on Zillow, but it wasn't posted on some of the other major websites and also Facebook Marketplace. So I had to address that issue with the property manager. And of course, Thanksgiving went by and not much interest still. So the property manager and I decided to cut down on the rent to gain more interest. So we decided to do that, so now we set the price at the lowest range that I was okay with. So that was going on, still nothing going on. Christmas went by and still no activity. And finally, after the new year, I started seeing more people being interested in the property, seeing the number of applicants going up. And I was finally able to place a tenant around mid-January. So if you're looking at the timeline, it started a little before Thanksgiving until mid-January. So it actually took over 2 months. The property was sitting vacant for over 2 months. This was, as you can imagine, this was so frustrating, but it was also a very valuable lesson for me. Why? Now I know that, in the Midwest during the winter, I'd rather just set the price low and get it rented out than having it just sitting vacant for a couple months. And if you're looking at, the whole year, you're probably losing way more money by having it vacant than, cutting down the rent by, $50 or $100. It's not that big a deal. So yeah, that's what I learned. So after all this happened, around mid-January, I had one good thing to look forward to, which was I hit the 6-month mark since the time I purchased the property. So now it was time to refi. And this is the exciting part because you want to know what the property would appraise for to see if you're going to recover some of your money or recover most of your money back. Or if you're lucky, you might get all of your money back. And if you're really lucky, then you'll hit a home run and you'll get all your money back and then some extra cash to put in your pocket. So, I started a conversation with the original loan officer that I spoke with way early on that, hey, my property is, there's a tenant in the property and it's been 6 months. So can we get this process started? And the reason why I went with him or went back to him is because even though I knew he may not have the best rate, I knew that he has an extremely efficient team that works really well. And as you can imagine, I was so just stressed and tired from the delayed rehab and delayed to get a tenant in place. And I just wanted to get it over with. I just wanted to get the refinance so I can get the money out. So, I'm actually really glad I did that because his team works extremely efficiently. From the day I emailed him, it took less than 2 weeks to send in an appraiser into the property. And yeah, this was really, I was so excited. I was looking forward to the day that the appraiser walked the property because I just wanted to know what the number was. So I was just looking at the calendar every single day, checking my every email every hour to see if I'm hearing back from the bank. So once the appraiser came back, or the day after the appraiser walked the property, I woke up with an email saying that the property has appraised at higher value than the numbers I estimated. So that means I hit a home run. I'm about to pull all my cash out and take some extra cash on the side. So this was crazy to me. And it was really the moment of truth because this BRRRR thing at that point is now it's for real. It's not just a theory, it really works. So I got super excited and I was so hyped up. And then after that, I decided to go back to the email and finish reading it. And the rest of the email says pretty much, this is the appraisal value pending sending in a structural engineer into to the foundation because there were some cracks in the basement. So what happened was, at this point I was like, oh man, wait, what happened? Like, why didn't the contractor see that crack? Why didn't the property manager say anything about the crack? We should have addressed this before it was even being appraised. But in the eyes of the property manager and the contractor, it wasn't that big of a deal because there were no concerns for leaking. The walls weren't caving in, so they had zero concerns. However, the appraiser, they work with the bank. So they need to make sure the bank is protected and to make sure that all the things in the property were addressed before they're willing to lend the money to me. So, yeah, sorry. Um, so after that happened, I had to, the bank is holding my money hostage, and I just have to do what they tell me to do. So I did send in a structural engineer so they can look at the basement. And when he came back, his assessment was that he was recommending to get some of the, you know, projects done, like placing I-beams and sealing the cracks. So, I didn't think that much of a deal, and so I sent in maybe 2 different companies, foundation companies, to get bids on the project. And when they came back, the numbers were looking a lot higher than I was comfortable with. It was in, $5, $6, $7,000 range. So to me, that was, I thought that was ridiculous. There was not really a concern. And why are you telling me to fix these when, it's not really a big deal? So I went back and forth with the bank, and actually with their approval, I went back to the structural engineer to see if he can change the wording on his assessment, saying, hey, instead of saying that you recommend to do this, can you say that it's not required at this time, but in the future, they do recommend to get this addressed. So with that wording, I was able to, save probably $4,000 or $5,000 just from doing that. So yeah, I got excited, and bank said, okay, and they sent the appraiser back in to check off the work that was finished. And this may not sound like it was a big of a deal, but if you're really looking at the timeline, it was really, really difficult to coordinate scheduling with the tenants that were living there because they both have full-time jobs. So sending in the appraiser, sending in the engineer, getting the bids, working the project, and then sending in the appraiser again, all these processes literally took almost 2.5 months, maybe 3 months. So it took that long just from the point where I emailed the loan officer to finish. So it took way longer than I expected, but I was happy to be just done with, man. So what did I do with the cash out money? Now that I have the money pulling out, I was actually able to reuse that money and roll it onto my next BRRRR property, which was actually under contract by the time the money was being refinanced out. So this actually worked out really beautifully. And with this new property, I really wanted to start building my new team. Instead of using other people's contractors, I wanted to build my own team. So, but I had learned about the wordings and the clauses on on the agreement with the contractor. So I found a contractor who was willing to change those wordings to make sure we have payment plans and to make sure we have the completion date so that they're not dragging out the project. So I was able to find another contractor that I worked with. And because this was our first time working together, there were definitely some hiccups, some miscommunications. We had different expectations on the quality of the finishes that I wanted. But I don't think you should get upset and just fire the contractor just because they didn't meet your expectation. But I think this is a learning point for the both of you guys, and be able to communicate so that you guys bring these up early on if you were to work on another project together. So, I'm just taking notes down to make sure, like, hey, on the first project, this happened and I had to dig into my contingency to cover these costs. Can we actually make sure these are all covered on the bids when you're walking the property? So yeah, those are some of the things I'm hope I'm gonna get out from this property when I'm working with the next one. But yeah, everything was finished, and I was able to rent it out. But this time around, I was actually able to find a tenant in less than a week, which was crazy. And of course, this is during the summer, which is the peak season. So the rent was actually higher than my first property, and it did not take long time at all. but yeah, so I just want to finish with the final verdict. Um, so was all of these headaches and stress worth it? Yeah, it was 100% worth it. I was absolutely. Although I may not have a ton of cash flow from this first property, I know I set myself for success. Um, with these rental properties, it's going to produce income. The property value is going to appreciate. I'm going to have tax benefits and deductions. And I'm going to have equity in the property. The tenant's paying down my mortgage where it's not coming out of my pocket. And, and also I'm locked in on a 30-year fixed rate. And that rate's going to stay the same for the next 30 years. However, the rent rates are eventually going to go up every year, right? So the margin or the cash flow is going to grow each and every year. So if you're looking at the long term, I think this was a no-brainer for me, really. Um, and yeah, so even though there was a lot of stress or some stress involved, looking back, it wasn't that bad, but at the time, it was really stressful. Um, this was really worth it, knowing that I'm building long-term wealth, so that which will allow me to provide for my parents financially, and for me and my fiance, not finance, fiance Jamie, to be financially independent. So with that said, I would like to thank each and every one of you for being here, listening to my, my story, and it was a pleasure. Yeah, so I'll give it back to Jazz.
Actually, it'll be me, Young.
Oh, CJ, okay.
Yes. Okay, real quick before we jump into the Q&A, I just had a few things that I wanted to bring up and highlight as you were speaking. So let's start off with the highs and lows of the rehab. What was the thing that was keeping you committed to the project, and how did you feel? What were some tools that you used to push through? Because obviously you completed it, but in those low times, how did you break through the doubt, the fear, all of those emotions that you're probably experiencing?
A lot of prayers. Yeah, it was hard because there's absolutely nothing you can do about that, really. And I guess I like to say it is what it is. I can't change it, so you just have to stick with it and trust the process that it will. The hurricane's gonna go. It's temporary setback, but if I'm looking at the long term on what it could be, really wasn't. It was stress. It was frustrating, but I knew it was gonna be all right. I knew I was gonna be all right. Yeah. I don't know if I answered that question.
You did. So
Yeah.
to tie into that, did you blame anybody? Did you feel like you needed to point fingers, or was this from a space of just, I'm owning this is happening? I mean, you kind of mentioned it is what it is.
I think okay. It was a little bit of both because I knew the contractor had multiple projects going on, and I honor that he's going in the order that he was going with. It's actually maybe probably a good thing because that means it shows his integrity, and just in order to do an honest work, I think that's a really good quality to have. But I was also thinking, I was hoping that he would just go into my property first, but that's not how it goes. So yeah, I was definitely a little frustrated. But I don't recall if I was blaming him. I could have. I'm sure there were moments. But look, right now I'm just thankful that he did a good job, and it's finished.
And I think what was good about you is you had a plan in place with an objective. At the end of the day, would you say your objective was hit?
Absolutely, it hit way above and beyond what I thought it was going to be. I was just hoping to get I was okay with having X amount of money left in the deal, but instead I probably made that much, in addition to pulling all the cash out. So it was great. Yeah, the rent was lower. At the time, I was a little bummed,
Right.
And it took long. But if I'm looking at the long term wealth, it's really nothing. It's just a couple years, maybe. If the rent's gonna go up, Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So prior to this, you were talking about deals. How many deals did you have to go through before you locked up this deal?
Oh man. I don't have a specific number, but if I were to put a number on it, I'm sure I analyzed at least a deal a day and put in multiple offers every week. So over the span of 2 to 3 months, I'm sure I analyzed over 100 properties. Yeah.
And prior to this deal, did you lock up a property before this one, or was this the first one you locked up?
I actually had another property that I was really close to locking it up. Oh, it was weird because they were asking for the EMD, and I signed the contract, but they're like, all right, you could just send in the contractor in. Um, so before my payment was made, the contractor actually walked the property and then said, yeah, this is not it. So I pulled back out. I paid the contractor, but I didn't put the EMD down. So I don't know if that counts, but this is the only one where I actually put the EMD down. Earnest money deposit.
Got it. Okay, let's start with the questions that are in the chat room. There's quite a bit, so let's try to get it all done before 7. Okay, Marcy has a question. After asking the 31 people, how many of them invested?
This one, let's see, because I don't want to give out too much personal information. So I won't say. I'll say 3. Yeah. I'll just leave it at that. 3 people.
Fair enough. Okay,
Yeah.
Chris, where did you go to find the people you asked to invest?
Start out with people closest to you, your family and friends. It could be your coworkers, old coworkers, because you don't have that credibility as an investor yet, right? So you got to start out with some people who actually trust you on a personal level. So yeah, that's why it's going to be a lot less. Having people who trust in you, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that. You gotta. That's why it probably took a lot more work initially because I don't have that credibility. But I started with family and friends.
Got it. Thank you. Chris Lum is asking, finding and purchasing the property, did you create an LLC or use another legal structure when you began approaching investors? And did you offer promissory notes for those investors? Now, some of this is legal verbiage, so disclose, please.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not here to advise anybody. I'm in no position to do that. I did not create an LLC. I still do not have an LLC. I did it under my personal name, and also I'm not a CPA or a lawyer. I can't give you any advice on these. It depends on your own personal situation to have LLC or not. To me, just doing it under my name was favorable in my opinion because I'd rather get the best rates and terms from the bank because it's under personal name. Yes, for the promissory notes. And yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Kimo, how many quotes did you get from GCs? Did you have a GC pick before you found the property?
This one, I actually got it from just one for the first property. For the second one, I had 2. First one, I actually went with, with CJ's guy because I wanted to, to me, I'm extremely, at least back then, I was very risk averse. I think that's the word. I wanted to play safe as much as I can. So I wanted to make sure I don't just go with a random contractor that I found on Facebook to go with, but I'd rather go with someone that I trusted. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Brad P., you mentioned having 7 days to close and had a contractor inspect the place and provide a quote. This allowed you to see that the numbers worked. Did you already have the contractor lined up before making the offer? I think you answered that. Did you get several contractors to give you bids? You answered that. Was there an independent home inspector involved?
No home inspector involved in this one. And for BRRRR, I mean, you can. I don't see how it can hurt that. Um, but the job of an inspector is to tell you what's wrong with the property, right? Their job is to find what's wrong with the property, versus, but they're not going to give you any estimates on what things are going to cost to repair. So for me, knowing that it's going to be a lot of, there's going to, it's going to require a lot of work on the property, I'd rather send in a contractor who would look at the things that need to be replaced and finished and give me tell me how much it's going to cost. So I hope that answers your questions.
Sounds good. Chris and Sheena, what percentage of rehab budget did you allot for contingency?
So for the contingency, I actually went with 10%, which was recommended at that time with that contractor. But good thing, I'm glad you brought this up, because the first project, because I was going with a trusty contractor, I just stuck with that 10%. But for the second project, if I'm looking at how much I allotted for, I actually allotted about 25% for contingency, because I'm working with a brand new contractor. I knew, or well, I didn't know, but I was anticipating that there will be some miscommunications, different expectations. There might be additional things coming up. So I just put a bigger contingency for that project. I didn't end up using all of it, but it was still, you get that peace of mind knowing that you have some money put aside to, fix up whatever needs to be fixed up. Yeah.
Good. Okay, Cedric, did the process go as you expected? What would you do differently if you could go back?
What would did the process go as expected? Yes and no. Okay, so if I'm looking at the big picture, definitely yes. But if I'm looking into little specifics of different segments of the BRRRR process, yeah, the rehab and rent sucked, and refi too. Man, just on those, that took 8 to 9 months. And in theory, you could finish that in 6 months, right? If everything goes right. Um, so let me see. What else would I do differently if I could go back in time? Oh yes. So at least for the first property, because I know that the appraiser works with the bank, they're on their side. So I would like to catch anything, like even if it's just cracks, just have them sealed early on, maybe address that so that that's not even going to be an issue coming up. Um, and I don't have to send in, engineer, get bids, fix it, send in the appraiser again, all of that. So I want to avoid all that headaches from happening. So maybe I can address that early on. I think that's the only thing I would have done differently. Some other things there, it was not up to my decision. And I think I may have answered that rent question. Maybe just lower the rent price a little bit during the winter, so that people can just don't leave it vacant.
Great. Okay, since we're talking about the BRRRR, how you were saying the rehab, the refinance, the rent, those three R's were frustrating for you. From the book's point of view or the podcast videos, whatever you watched prior to experiencing the actual action steps, how different was it from what it's portrayed by professionals and what actually happens when you apply the knowledge?
So from the books and podcasts, for the most part, they're always sharing the good stories, but it doesn't always go that way. In real life, in reality, things aren't as things don't go as smooth as you would like it to be. So yeah, things come up, and you just have to learn on the go, and pivot and just keep going with it. Yeah, I mean, the books are still great. I think it's really good information because you learn the concept. It's just a matter of you applying. Are you able to apply that knowledge into action? I think that's what differentiates everything. But yeah.
Cool. Good answer. Okay. B, did you get referrals for all your core four team? If not, how did you go about finding them?
All right. So if I can remember the core four, oh, so the officer, loan officer, or the lender, um, agent, contractor, property management. So yeah, I guess uh, 3 out of the 4 I did get a referral. Yeah. So I think that's why I felt so much better going into it. I had a property manager that was already referred to me. I actually had 3 property managers. I interviewed them and decided to go with the one I like. Um, Lender, yes, I was referred to him. Contractor, yes, I was referred to him. Agent, um, I think that's more of on your own. And I actually did apply a lot of things from the BRRRR book, sending out those emails, looking through Zillow to see, if they can, get me connected with an agent who is willing to work with investors, blah, blah, blah. Um, but yeah, so I had 3 of the 4 referred.
Great. Thank you. Chemo, do you mind sharing what your numbers were? Purchase price, rehab, rent, how much money did you have to leave in the property? This is up to you to share.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just leave it very general so that it's actually easy to follow and it kind of stays in that range. So I was able to get the property for about, let's say about 55. Um, and the rehab cost was about 40. So about 95 all in. And it appraised. I was thinking that this property's the ARV or the after repair value was going to be around 120, 130. So I could pull most of the money out, or I could actually pull all the money out. Um, but yeah, it actually appraised at about 140. So I was able to pull all the money out. And the rent, I thought it was going to be somewhere between a big range, but 1,000 to 1,200. But at the end of the day, it rented around 1,000, which I'm okay with.
Cool. Thank you. Brad, what was your original bid, or was your original bid one price or broken down by each job? What was your payment structure? Do you mind sharing your cash flow and cash on cash return on investment?
Let's see, it was your original one price or broken down. Uh, yeah, it was definitely broken down into line items, which is important. And you can kind of pick, I kind of don't want to do this. I want to go with a cheaper option, or you can kind of, cater to your own liking. Um, and payment structure was, I think it was every week or every other week where I was making draw payments. And the cash flow, I probably won't go too much into detail. Maybe if you want to ask me later after the recording's over, you can do that. I don't honestly haven't really calculated cash on cash. And this is just personal for me because to me, like getting cash on cash on year one is not a big deal. It's not going to make or break anything. To me, just locking down on these good properties that's going to give me, good return long term was good enough for me. And just the fact that I had no money left in the deal, you're literally holding on to a property with no money in it. So, to me, that's why I didn't really calculate cash on cash.
Great. Thank you. Cedric has another question. How much did cash, how much cash did you keep in the back pocket in case the not so good stuff hit the fan? What was your emergency fund?
I think I mentioned earlier, I had, 10% of the contingency. But for, I guess, the repairs and capex and all that thing, I'm assuming is what you're asking after, while there's a tenant in there. Um, Honestly, whatever money I pulled out, I just put it back into that specific account and I just don't even touch it. It's just the money that I don't ever play with. And Yeah. So I guess I don't have like a really good strategy to put like, oh, 10%, 10%, 5% into separate accounts, but all the money that comes in goes into that one account. Uh, so yeah, I just leave it at that. But I so when I refied out, all that extra money went straight back in there, and now that's my emergency fund.
Great. Okay, we got about 10 more minutes, so I'm going to try and speed this up a little bit. Bear with me. Charlene has a question. How do you determine incentives and fines for GC? Do you use a leasing agent or property manager for this property?
Incentives and fines. So yeah, this one, I also got it. I got it from the GC, but the BRRRR book also mentions it. Um, or yeah, and I think a lot of the books probably would mention that too. So if they were to finish, uh, you set the completion date, and whatever, how many ever days they finish before, they get, let's say, like $100 a day that they finish early. For the fine, you can maybe put like 50, 70, $100 of a fine or penalty after the completion date. So what's the second question? Property manager. Yep, for sure. I don't want to be involved in any of this.
Passive is where you want to be, right?
Yes. So you do all the work, and then it's passive after that. So you did your yeah.
Joe, how much capital did you have to complete your first deal? I'm assuming this is your own money.
Oh, this one? Oh, yeah, I did put some money into the deal. I don't want to go into specific capital on how much I raised. I think I did talk about the purchase price and the rehab earlier, so I hope that answers your question.
Great.
But I did have some money in the deal. Yes, definitely.
Deep said, did you review the title report or just looked at the county records?
I did look at the county records and title report. Maybe this shows my the newbie side of the investing, but I don't really know or review the title report. I did review everything that was given to me, but I'm not sure if I can be able to answer that question appropriately because I looked at everything that was given, but I'm not sure if I did look at that. Yeah.
Okay, so last question is from Gilbert. Would you recommend to plan rehabs be done during late January, early February timeline to have homes rented sooner?
Rehabs be done during late January. I think it all depends really. I wouldn't go out of my ways to delay the project or try to finish early and maybe compromising the quality of work or anything like that. Yeah, if you do it during the holiday season, it's probably not the best time, but you can try to have the property manager sign the lease that's like a year and a half so that it wraps around to the next season. Or by the next time a tenant leaves in January or something like that, you still have a couple weeks and then just find a new tenant. But honestly, I have not gotten to that point where I have to place it, get a new tenant in there. I don't know if that answers your question. If not, I'm sorry.
I think that was a decent explanation.
Good enough.
Okay, we got one more question we can get answered from Joel. Where can we find out more info about investing out of state?
There's a great book called Out of State Real Estate Investing, I think, by David Green, which I did read, and his BRRRR book. And webinars, podcasts, YouTube videos, those are all great. And probably the best one is actually going to the meetups. It's actually a lot better in person, obviously, where you can network and talk with other investors who are actually doing this. And there are a lot of investors on the island that are investing out of state, actually. So just come out to these meetings when we're able to, and just go from there. You just start connecting with people, and then someone's gonna say, like, how I shared, I went to one meetup and then someone told me about CJ and Jazz's meetup. So I went there and learned about this. So you never know what's gonna lead to where. So yeah, just have an open mind and just go to everything, man.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you, Young, for your time. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
your story and your reasons and answering everybody's questions. Jasmine, if you don't mind closing us out.
Yep. Thank you again, Young and Brandon, for doing such a wonderful job at this meeting and sharing your experience. Next month, we will be having Corey. He will be, he's a hard money lender, a local boy from here, and from Kiko Exchange. He'll be talking about raising money. For that meeting, we will still be on Zoom. We will be doing the same time, same place in your homes. And next month, at the last Wednesday of the month, 6 p.m. We also have a meeting that we're going to try to attempt, depending on how everything is working out with our state, in person on the 24th as well. If you want any information on how to be in person or on our Zoom calls, you can go to wnnproperties.com and we have all of the information there. We will be staying here for a few more minutes after this call is over to talk, catch up, network, whatever we can from this event as best as we can, since we cannot be in person. This is the best we've got, and we will work with it because we are going to continue to move forward with what we're doing, no matter what the situation is. And if anybody else has any other topics or thoughts that they'd like to share, we'd love to hear it, and come to our website and at our Facebook page for the Westside Meetup and add it there. That would be really appreciated as well. But to honor your time and make sure that we do end like we said we will, we'd like to thank you again, and please stay in network and talk with us. Have a great one, guys.